Great. So I'm Adam. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for coming to listen. I'm going to talk about financial well-being and how I've seen financial well-being programs evolve through 3 phases and why I think that third phase is especially critical at this point in time. So I was thinking about this presentation and oh my gosh, what a time to be talking about financial well-being with everything that's going on. And I looked into my metaphorical playbook and I tossed it out the window because, normally I would start something like this with maybe a show of hands. Hands up if you ever worry about money. Or I might take you through a bunch of statistics to attempt to convince you that if you're not worried, your employees certainly are. I don't think I need to do that today. I think we get it, right? I think we get that everyone is worrying about money right now. So what do I talk about? Well, maybe I could really heap on loads about just how bad things might get, just how scary it might be, this cost of living crisis. But I don't think that's helpful either. I think what we need in any crisis, and indeed what we need when we talk about financial well-being and managing our money and planning the future, what we need is hope. So I'd like to talk about hope. I think there are some real reasons that we as a community of reward and well-being professionals can be really hopeful about our ability to help our employees through this crisis. And that is because it hasn't caught us at a standing start. Right? We've been thinking about financial well-being, putting programs and foundations into place for quite a few years now. Or if you haven't yet launched your financial well-being program, as we saw in the last speech, some of you haven't, you've got other companies that you can look to that are a little bit ahead. The path's been trodden, things have been learned. So I'd like to talk through some of that history of financial well-being in the workplace as I've seen it. And I'll start with a little bit of personal history. So my journey probably, I guess, started over 20 years ago. I worked in banks and places like that, dare I admit, forgive me, those that work in banks, for about 10 years. And then 11 years or so ago, I left that environment and I set off on a mission to try and make it easier for the public to find access to good, affordable financial advice. And I started this website, it's called Vouched For. It's still going today. There's about 1 million people use it every year. They use it to find a financial advisor that they can trust, one that's well rated by their clients. And anyways, a few years into this mission, myself and a few of the team, we saw that the world needed something more than just financial advice. The world needed access to a different type of help that was much more affordable for the everyday person. So we started a financial coaching business. That has now become Octopus MoneyCoach. And we still weren't thinking about the workplace until the business next door to us that happened to have a few hundred employees came along and they said, have you ever launched financial coaching into a workplace? Is that something you offer? To which I think my response was, well, we offer it now. And lo and behold, a few weeks later, we were at our first event like this and we got to meet a bunch of folk like your good selves. And I was really taken aback by just how much excitement there was in the room around this concept of financial well-being. So this is back in 2017, 5 years ago now. Lots of excitement, lots of people starting to understand the importance of financial well-being. Lots of studies were being done at the time, trying to quantify the impact that financial well-being can have on things like productivity, things like attrition, turnover. The challenge really was translating that enthusiasm from this rewards and well-being community up to the boardrooms, because at that point, boardrooms weren't getting it. And as that started to happen more, as more and more of those studies got published, more and more of those business cases got written, lots of boardrooms took it on board, lots of leadership started sponsoring these financial well-being initiatives. But some responded with, well, this is all well and good, we get it, we get people need help with their money, but is it our job? Is it the employer's responsibility to help with this stuff? Well, I've never felt it's my place to say what an employer's responsibility is or isn't. But what I can say, what I do believe, is it's a massive opportunity for an employer to help their employees with this stuff. And I'd go further than that. I think employers are society's best hope when it comes to changing how we all feel and think about money. And I say that because when I think about the alternatives, right, schools, they're doing a bit more now, but for everyone in this room, without judging too much as to your ages, schools didn't teach us about money, right? Banks, again, it's changing, but primarily they're there to sell product. Even our friends and family don't help us as much as they could because as a society, we've made money taboo. We don't talk about it as much as we could do. So I strongly believe that the workplace is our best hope. And again, this is changing. Boards get it now. Leadership get it now. Thanks to the COVID pandemic, thanks to the cost of living crisis. We're past this phase in many, not everywhere, but in many organisations. We're now at the point of, right, we've got to do something about financial well-being. We've got to help our employees through this. So if that's how attitudes have changed, let me give my perspective on how financial well-being programs have evolved. And these are the three phases that we allude to in the title. So the first phase, for decades now, we've been focusing on financial benefits, making more and more benefits available to our employees, covering more and more different needs, offering more and more choice. More and more benefits platforms have come to market, making it easier and easier for employees to navigate that choice that they now have. So that's a fantastic foundation for a financial well-being program. Second phase, financial education, especially in the last few years, as I've become exposed to this arena of workplace reward and well-being, more and more platforms coming to market offering help in terms of financial education. Webinars are more and more commonplace, educating people on different aspects of money. There are platforms that will tailor specific content to specific individuals within the workplace. In some instances, there are programs that employers have put into place to encourage more conversation. So let's start talking to one another within a workplace about our money. Let's tackle that taboo. Let's break down the stigma. And then there's the third phase. Before I get to the third phase, these two phases are fantastic. They are really, really, really strong foundations. But still, when I talk to employers that have put all this stuff in place, they will say, we're feeling really good about what we've got in place, but employees aren't engaging with our benefits as much as we hoped they would. Employees are still worried about money. So what is this third phase that I believe we need to add into this mix to really achieve that impact with our employees' well-being? It is one-to-one guidance, helping people at an individual level. Now, I feel quite self-conscious about the fact that I'm saying the big new thing is this thing that our business happens to offer. I can't avoid it. I passionately believe that if everyone had access to one-to-one financial guidance coaching in their workplace, millions of lives would be transformed. I really believe that. As I said earlier, my journey didn't start with, I know what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and sell financial coaching to workplaces. It started with, I want to help the public get better help with their money, and that journey led me here. And it's the same with you guys. Your journey didn't start with, I want to offer one-to-one guidance to all my employees. It started with, I want to help them with their money, I want to help them worry less. And it led you to the same belief, I'm going to assert, that one-to-one coaching is the answer. I'm going to assert that because we did a survey in February of 200 employers, and we found that 44% of people back in February, or employers, were saying that they intended to introduce one-to-one financial coaching in the next 3 years. You'll see financial education, that second phase as I described it, is even higher at 50%. And that was back in February. That was before the cost of living crisis reached its worst point, right? We've seen demand for one-to-one coaching in the workplace increase fourfold since February. So what is this one-to-one financial coaching or guidance? Excuse me. As you would imagine, it's sitting down with each employee. It's understanding what money means to them. What are their fears, their hopes, their dreams, their worries? What future life would bring them happiness? How affordable is that? How affordable might it be if we manage our money in slightly different ways? What it isn't, it's really crucial to say, is it is distinct to financial advice. The big difference is coaches don't recommend products. They help you think about money, learn about money, plan your money, but they don't recommend specific financial products. What that does is take out a lot of the risk, a lot of the cost, and it makes it affordable. It better addresses the needs of most people. It's also, by the way, why you might not have heard of financial coaching until recently. It hasn't really existed as a profession for very long. The financial services industry never really thought of it because it's not directly linked to selling product. And that fundamentally is what the financial services industry is there to do. And just to continue on that point, I read an FT article yesterday or day before, and they'd interviewed a lady, a director of happiness at Timpson. And I don't know, maybe she's here, I'd love to meet her. And it was talking about how she now spends the majority of her time helping people with their money at a one-to-one level. And there was a wonderful quote in there. It was, "I'm not a regulated financial advisor, but I know how to make a budget and I know my colleagues." And I just thought that was a wonderful attitude. I think often we can be too scared of helping our colleagues for fear of getting something wrong. I would encourage us to think about what would happen if we do nothing. So again, what is this financial coaching? I'm not here talking about making a phone number available somewhere on an intranet site that maybe a handful of people will call each year. I'm talking about engagement programs that see the majority of your people sit down with a coach and spend a good 3 or 4 hours over the year working through things. Right? That's how we truly move the needle on financial well-being. It won't be for everybody. There are, of course, lots of people out there who like managing their own money, they feel more comfortable with it, but we've seen up to 60% of people in a workplace will make good use of this kind of service. In terms of the impact, so as I said, this third phase is about building on all that foundation, giving that last piece of the recipe to actually bring impact. This is one illustration. This is an email we got the other day from a CEO of about a 600-person company. It is not one of those testimonials where you like write it yourself and send it off and say, "Would you mind putting your name to this?" This came entirely unprompted. And you're seeing it, he was saying he's never had as many thanks from his people as he has had since introducing financial coaching to them. If we put some numbers to it, it can be staggering. So on average, the people we coach get a plan that shows them how to be up to £10,000 better off in just 12 months. Now, a couple of caveats to that. We'll help the household. So if they want to bring their partner into the coaching, we cover that. So that's household improvement. We tend to go into more like office-based workplaces. So the average salary is perhaps a bit higher than, say, retail or factory workers. But nonetheless, we're talking about Middle Britain here. It could be £10,000 better off just by doing things a little bit differently with the money and within a year. More stats. So when you kind of add all these up, what it basically works out is 80% of people, after they've had this kind of help, will take action. They will either start spending less, saving more, putting more into a pension or paying down debt. And what I'd love to do is go through a little case study with you. I'm going to whiz through this in the interest of time, skip over a lot of the technicality. I'm going to talk about this family. And before I explain the situation of this family, one thing I want to say is, at this point in time, this cost of living crisis, I think we can think of success as helping people get through it. I think surviving is success in this climate. But if I return to financial well-being and what it really means, it is about understanding what will bring happiness in your life. What's going to make me happy if me and my family can do these things in the immediate term, in the medium term, in the long term. What are those things that will make us happy? And do we have the financial resource to be able to do it? And are we managing our money in a way that's going to make sure we have that financial resource? When people have got confidence in all of those things, that's what brings financial well-being. That's when the stress disappears. And what we're seeing in the cost of living crisis, of course, people are worried about the here and now and how do I get through it, but people are also worried about what all of this means for that future that they had their heart set on. And they're worried, is that still going to be achievable? And in this case, the future was sending helping the kids financially through university when they're a bit older, and being able to retire a little bit early. So, for example, at 62. They were the two big things that this couple wanted their future to include. And sorry, they were both working, earning about 84k combined, so a little bit over average. We used our forecasting technology, and this is the bit where I'm not going to go through a detail of it because it would take a long time. But suffice to say, the forecast showed that pre-cost of living crisis, they would be able to retire early, and they would have about a 32k income, and they'd be able to afford all of those other things. And that 32k income is before the state pension kicks in. Because they wanted to retire early, they'd have to wait a few more years for that. But the impact of the cost of living crisis, when you look at the impact on their mortgage, the mortgage costs going up, it was going to bring that retirement income down from 32k to about 25k. So now all of a sudden, that future doesn't look as possible as it did. So we helped them work through some options. Some of these options you might like, some you might not like. The point was we were working through options and ideas. So one was, what happens if we delay retirement by 4 years? In that scenario, it looked like we'd be back on track in terms of the retirement income and still be able to send the children to university or help them financially through that. Or we could look at not helping the kids financially through university. Actually, it didn't make that much difference to their retirement income. So it's up to 27, but not all the way back to 32. We could trim spending, so we could cut back on the holidays, the eating out, traveling, live frugally. That would, if done for a very long period of time, get you back to that level of retirement income that you were hoping for. Or we could wait till the kids have left. We could downsize. That capital that we freed up, we could put into a pension. And that would, again, get us back to that level of retirement income. Now, what's the right answer? Well, there is no right answer in that scenario. That's very much up to them. But a couple of key things. One is, probably wouldn't do any of those things full on right now. Let's wait and see. The economy is going to change. The world is going to change. We're talking about 20, 30 years there. There's no need for immediate panic in that context. But equally, you might want to trim costs a bit, and you might now understand a bit more about the benefit that would bring in the long term. The big benefit of that long-term planning is, while some of those scenarios might not sound as good as they would have been in a pre-cost of living crisis situation, it brings a tremendous amount of reassurance to people because they're often fearing that the worst case is going to be even worse and that those goals are going to be completely obliterated. And actually, by showing them, okay, it might not be what you hope for, but it's still something that you could look forward to, that can bring a lot of peace of mind. And the reason I go through all that is you can imagine that situation is so unique, it's so specific, and their feelings about those things are going to be so unique and specific. You can't get to that level of insight and support in anything other than a one-to-one context. So just to wrap up, I think a financial wellbeing program of the future, if what you really want is impact, is a combination of those three things. I would love to ask for two things, if I may be so bold. One is, as I say, I believe millions of lives could be transformed if every workplace offered this. That won't happen if there's only us or a few providers of this kind of service. So please talk to every company that supports you in your endeavours, talk to them about starting to build this kind of service. Second, if we're going to help millions of people in this way, we're going to need tens of thousands of coaches, financial coaches. As I said, the financial services industry hasn't built this as a profession. There aren't thousands of people out there at the moment doing this job, yet it is a phenomenal career path for people. Our coaches come from all sorts of backgrounds. We've got HR managers, we've got former army officers, we've got teachers, we've got actresses, all sorts of backgrounds. It's a wonderful way for them to help people and for them to work flexibly, locally, remotely. So if ever you get the opportunity to spread word about this as a profession, whether that's talking to a colleague over a cup of coffee or whether you're at a lecture on switching careers, talking to hundreds, please give it a plug. It will help all of us. So thank you for listening, and might have time for a question.